Planning a wedding and feeling overwhelmed? Simply Eloped makes it easy. With over 14,000 elopements and vow renewals planned and 37 stunning U.S. destinations, the planners at Simply Eloped have you covered. Their all-inclusive packages connect you with over 700 top-tier vendors, cutting stress, cost, and complexity. And no two packages are alike because they customize it for you. Your story deserves ease. Let them handle the hard stuff. You just show up and say, I do. Start at simplyeloped.com.
Today on CityCast DC, so what really went on between Muriel Bowser and Donald Trump during the DC police takeover? The Washington Post's Jonathan O'Connell has reported out an epic look at the relationship between the Blue Mayor and the people who make up the MAGA administration. It's full of jaw-dropping details. Come for the cocktail party with Russ Vought. Stick around for the Marshawn Lynch meme. Today is Monday, November 17th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So you wrote this amazing play-by-play of Bowser during the takeover. It had a lot of previously unreported details about her interactions with Trump, about her interactions with Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. I'd say a lot of folks maybe thought some of this was kind of the case, but wasn't sure. We know that Bowser was, at least publicly, she was a lot more confrontational with the president during her first term. She painted Black Lives Matter Plaza and so on. The aim of this piece was to get into, details of how she interfaced with Trump and his top advisors in the second term. So why don't you start before that term even started? It's December. Trump has been elected. He's not inaugurated yet. And Muriel Bowser goes down to Mar-a-Lago and has a meeting with the president-elect. What happened at that meeting?
Yeah, the mayor is one of only two elected Democrats in the country to go to Mar-a-Lago, I believe, the other being Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania. And she goes because she knows that she, as the mayor of the city, is going to have some sort of many interactions with the federal government on many, many different topics, not just criminal justice or safety, but also transportation, logistics, all sorts of economic issues, all sorts of things that she wants to make sure she has, a way to talk with them about. And she and the president know each other. She has been in office all the way since his first term. So they had been going back and forth on things in the first term. And she, some of this is in the story, obviously, but she goes down to Mar-a-Lago. She has a list of things she's prepared to talk about, and like things that she thinks they have common ground on and things that she thinks he maybe doesn't see eye to eye with her on. He's been talking in the news before she goes down about how crime infested and dirty and awful this DC is. And, she thought part of that might be from the fact that when he left office the first time, it was COVID. And, there were fewer people downtown. There was higher vacancy downtown. The economy downtown was not as good. And part of the message she wanted to bring to him was, listen, this is not COVID anymore. The city is on the rebound. Downtown is on the rebound. And she wanted to impress that upon him. Well, one thing he wanted to do was tell her he was planning on taking over the government. So she had to pivot from his interest in just taking over the government to talking about things that they maybe have some common ground on.
Was the meeting personable? I mean, I remember afterwards she said they had talked about Jaden Daniels and Trump thought he was amazing, which played pretty well. But face to face, I mean, I don't. The mayor can be a little bit prickly sometimes. Here he is saying these things that are pretty shocking. What was the mood like?
I should say I obviously wasn't at this meeting, but I did speak with Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, about it, and Mayor Bowser and other folks. I think it starts in a pretty tense place. He is early on saying, I'm planning to take over the city and leave you as the mayor, which for people who live in DC and know that we have no voting representation is, a scary threat. But then, like once she says like, that's not going to work, but like, I think there's some things we can work on together. They do find a lot of common ground. It ends up being pretty amicable for a lot of the meeting. I mean, they're talking about things like making sure the lawn is mowed on parkland, making sure that graffiti is cleaned up. We put in the story his interest in making sure the tiles and the tunnels and the tunnel that goes under the National Mall is like the tiles are cleaned up and look bright and shiny. He like wants the city to look good. It's kind of like the hotel owner that he is. They are very different personalities. They're not like, even if their politics were more similar, I don't think that they're the kind of people that necessarily would hang out probably. So there's like not only a vast political difference, but there's a vast personality difference. And I think it took them a little while to get to a place where they could talk about things that they had common ground on. But then once they did, they talked for like an hour and it was pretty amicable.
So we've got the next few months go by. During this time, Bowser makes a lot of sort of accommodations with both Trump and sort of Republican views in general. They rip up Black Lives Matter Plaza. There's this task force that Trump institutes, DC people are not part of, about beautifying DC. Things seem to be going okay. And then it's summer and the takeover happens.
Yeah.
And this is, Trump has, as even before he was reinaugurated, he's been dangling these threats, we're going to take it over, etc. Then Big Balls gets jumped on Swan Street.
Yes.
And all of a sudden this happens. What's Bowser thinking? And like, when did she learn about all this going down?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Black Lives Matter Plaza, because I actually think that was a really meaningful moment that I didn't really get to write about too much of the story. Black Lives Matter Plaza, which she built after George Floyd's murder, and there's unrest in many American cities over that murder, was like a really meaningful place to a lot of people. And there are other Black Lives Matter plazas in other parts of the country that sort of were built after she built the one in DC. So I think her decision to pave that over and remove it is sort of like an indication of like the strategy she's going to take here. Because if you wanted to fight over any of this, before this emergency order that Trump issues in August, that would have been a place you could probably try to do it. I don't know what you would get for it, but like a lot of people were probably prepared to fight over Black Lives Matter Plaza. And maybe it couldn't have been won. I think the mayor would argue you couldn't win that fight anyway. But I think that's like a signal to people that like, of the mayor's strategy to sort of cooperate where she can on things she probably can't win anyway if she fought, and then try to win on other things. So when she's watching TV in her office when she learns about the emergency order, and that's in August, Trump is doing a press conference. Trump is at the White House doing a press conference, and she's down Pennsylvania Avenue at her office watching on television with some of her aides there. Again, I wasn't there for this part either. But she's very quickly thinking, first of all, she wants to know what this actually means. She hasn't read the order yet, and very quickly pivots to like, how do we get out of this? This is obviously an incursion on home rule and the city's sovereignty, and she wants to get out of it as soon as she can.
I mean, a lot of politicians, a lot of people, human beings, would have been really angry. I mean, here she is, a person, she has done just about everything that like a blue city politician could do to accommodate and play nice and not be confrontational, and gets kicked in the teeth anyway. But I was struck in your piece how sort of devoid of emotion the scene was. It was quickly a pivot to like, what does this mean and what can we do to get out of it?
Yeah, I think I've asked the mayor. I mean, people who know her, I think she's been mayor for 10 years. It's a really long time to be mayor in a big American city. There are very few big American cities that have mayors that go that long. So she has like, the way she put it to me when I've asked her occasionally, like, how'd that make you feel? Or, what emotions were you experiencing in that moment? She has like pretty thick skin about a lot of this stuff. She doesn't take a lot of it personally. She's a very pragmatic person generally. She does get mad periodically. She does get happy. I don't want to pretend like she's emotionless, but when she has some work to do, she usually in my experience, focuses on the work and not on, what her feelings are in that moment. So I think she pretty quickly pivoted to like, first of all, she also knew and expected something like this would happen. Ever since she was at Mar-a-Lago and he says, I want to take over the city. I don't think she's stunned when he finally 8 months later is like, okay, this is what I'm doing. It's just more about like, what are in the details and what can we do about it?
What's the mood like in the room with Bowser and her people? I mean,
at that time,
they are blindsided by this. He's insulting their city and their stewardship of the city. Is it quiet? Are they shouting back?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there for that part, Michael. I did ask everybody who was there with her at the time what it was like. His words when he's announcing the emergency order are much more severe than what's actually in the emergency order. He's talking about a real like broad takeover that her reaction is like, this doesn't sound legal to me. How's he going to do that? And then when she actually got the language and the aides got a hold of the actual language in the order, it's much more specific to a portion of the Home Rule Act that allows the president in an emergency to put the police department in charge of, in this case, the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi for 30 days. And that's a much more specific thing than what he's saying. If you look back at what he's saying on television about how he's going to have to take over and clean up the Capitol, they're not doing it on their own. It's much more specific. And then she can figure out how she wanted to try to get out of it.
So shortly after this, there's a meeting that takes place between the mayor and members of the DC Council and the city's elected Attorney General.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really sort of telling meeting about the tenor of the people who run our city. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of view the way people, not just politicians in the city, but our residents and, our neighbors, people who just are thinking about how to deal with Trump in this situation. I broadly think of it in kind of two paths. You can either kind of take the path the mayor is taking where she tries to cooperate where she finds it tenable in order to sort of make some hay on other areas, or people who are like, no, do not cooperate with him. You should fight him at every turn. Make everything he does to the city as difficult as you possibly can make it. Bring other people to your fight and do not help him in any way and just fight for every inch. And I think those two paths are sort of, that divergence there, that choice comes up in this meeting because, a number of members of the DC Council are further left of her and would prefer to see, and have made speeches about this, would prefer to see the city fight as much as possible. Fight him, help other cities fight him, be part of this national democratic resistance to President Trump, which they consider, many people have called it his some of the incursions he's taken on cities to be, that people are calling it racist, fascist, and those leaders are using those words, and the mayor is not.
But she calls these members of the council the woke squad.
Well, that's her staff. Her staff's, yeah. So in this meeting, you do have some people who are very disappointed in this meeting. The mayor has just made a public announcement about how, the district appreciates, using that word appreciates, the federal surge or, some of the help from law enforcement. And people are just really upset about that. And some people are just sitting there, some of the council members sitting there stewing about like, why is the mayor going alone and saying nice things about Trump here? And other people are like, what? Speaking up and saying, why are you doing that? This is not a time to be cooperating. This is a time to be fighting. And she kind of gets fed up and she says, listen, like, we could take a vote right now. If you all want to vote right now to go down in the front of the Wilson building and we can have a press conference saying, F off President Trump, get out of our city, yada, yada, let's do it. And that's kind of like, it goes from a real tense kind of angry moment to quiet for a second. And they kind of have to move past that. But that's where the differences are.
Right. And ultimately the members of the council didn't do that. I was so surprised, like they could have done a good cop, bad cop thing where she's the good cop and the members of the council act all strident. But that didn't happen either.
Well, some members of the council have made statements about what they view the city should be doing. I mean, Councilmember Janice Lewis-George is from Ward 4. She has made a number of speeches, very fiery speeches, one in front of the Capitol, one by that Free DC march, I believe, about how she thinks, the city should be responding to Trump. I know Zachary Parker and Win 5 has made some comments publicly about how he feels the city should be a little bit, more clear about what they are for and not for. So, council members all have their own points of view, obviously, and some of them are much more strident in arguing like you get nothing for cooperating with Trump and you shouldn't do it. And this is likely to be a failed strategy.
And did she advise them? I mean, as I recall, she initially advised them to just hold your tongues on making statements in general about the takeover.
Well, there's a couple things at play there. I mean, for one thing, the Attorney General, Brian Schwab from D.C., has filed a number of lawsuits, and there are concerns that statements made by elected officials could affect that litigation. And he made that clear in that meeting. But yeah, I mean, there are difficult moments where the mayor, the chairman of the council, and the council members have to decide what they can be unified on and what they want to speak separately on. And this is one of those situations where sometimes they can speak in unity about how they want to handle something and how they're responding to Trump, and sometimes they don't agree and are going to speak separately.
This holiday season, DC small business needs our support more than ever. That's why we're excited to tell you about the DC Holiday Hunt, a citywide scavenger hunt that makes supporting local shops and restaurants fun and rewarding. It's simple. Earn points by visiting small businesses, exploring neighborhood landmarks, answering trivia questions, and sharing your favorite holiday traditions. With over $3,000 in prizes from local DC businesses up for grabs, there has never been a better reason to explore our city. The hunt runs from November 23rd through January 3rd. Visit districtbridges.org/DC Holiday Hunt to sign up today. That's districtbridges.org/DC Holiday Hunt.
Guess what? CityCast has some news. I'm Sean McPherson, the host of CityCast Twin Cities.
And I'm Jane Sihu, and I'm the host of CityCast Seattle. Hey, if you have a friend in one of our cities, can you text them for us?
Yeah, something, simple like, hey, how's that rash doing? And do you listen to podcasts? Because I have one you're definitely going to like. After that, tell them that CityCast has helped you become more informed, more involved, and more connected to your amazing city.
We're going to help that person you know in Seattle who's been trying to make friends.
And we're also going to do that for that guy you only kind of knew in college who moved back to the Twin Cities after graduation.
Don't we all have that guy?
Yeah, and usually that guy is named Todd.
So did you text them yet?
Jane, let's just wait a minute. We don't want to rush anybody. We'll do a little small talk. How's everything going in Seattle?
Beautiful, beautiful. Fall leaves popping. How about Twin Cities?
Today, beautiful and sunshiny in St. Paul. Okay, Jane, I bet they are done texting by now, and I just want to remind them, hey, you, please tell that friend to subscribe to CityCast Twin Cities or Seattle, wherever you get your podcasts.
Or if you don't want to text them and you're really just on Instagram sending them DMs all the time with funny videos, send them a DM of our latest videos. You can find us at CityCast Twin Cities or CityCast Seattle on Instagram. Thanks.
So from your reporting, another thing that really struck me was that, by contrast, it appeared she developed a very good working relationship with Susie Wiles, who's Trump's chief of staff, and with Pam Bondi, the attorney general. How did this develop, and what forms did these meetings take?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a number of, there's also Jeanine Pirro, U.S. Attorney for D.C. So, the mayor has met all three of these women since Trump's election. She met Susie Wiles for the first time in Mar-a-Lago. And I think Susie Wiles, she spoke with me briefly, which I'm grateful for this story to help inform this. I think she's impressed by the mayor's political skills. And again, Ms. Wiles and the mayor do not have similar politics at all. But, Ms. Wiles is recognizing at this point that, the mayor is negotiating between the Trump administration and the DC Council, and there is not probably a wider political gulf in America than between those two. And so it's a tough situation. I think Ms. Wiles appreciates Bowser trying to sort of negotiate that space. The mayor does want to see more police officers on the street in Washington. She's been wanting that for years before Trump was reelected. She does appreciate the fact that violent crime is down and it's dropping faster. It's dropped faster than it did even before Trump was in office. She wants to see guns off the street. She wants to see carjackings down. She wants to see homicides down. And she is happy those things are happening. And she shares that view on those topics with Jeanine Pirro, with Pam Bondi, with Susie Wiles. I mean, if you saw Pam Bondi speak in front of the Congress, I don't know, it's probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now, maybe, Michael. She was extremely complimentary of Mayor Bowser and her work cooperating with the administration to do this. So they do have some legitimately and sincerely shared views on crime.
So there's this meeting where Bowser sort of opens her part of it. It's the chief of staff, the attorney general, the U.S. attorney general, and the mayor of D.C. And she says, we got to end this emergency, and here's how we're going to do it.
Yes.
And then she shows them some stuff. What does she show them?
She shows them 2 things. She shows them, one, the number of police officers in the city is down, and she's trying to reverse that trend. She wants to see more officers. And she says to them, listen, she's pleased with the gap in officers that some of the Justice Department agencies have filled. There are more officers on the street. They are getting guns off the street. And she's pleased to see that. She's glad carjackings are down. She's glad homicides are down. On the other hand, she is unhappy about a number of other things. And she does raise these with Wiles and Bondi at the White House.
What are those things?
One of them being ICE. She brings them a slide or a printout saying ICE is terrorizing people. She does not want to see National Guard people from National Guardsmen from other states. She's worried, for instance, that there will be violence associated between residents and these National Guards people who are from completely other communities, other cultures, what have you. And she's worried about that. And she also does not want to see masked officers. She thinks that police officers, and she said this publicly a number of times, should identify who they are when they are helping keep the community safe. And she thinks these things are making it much more difficult to police the city because residents are losing faith in them, in law enforcement. So she's bringing, it's like, I like these parts, I don't like these parts. They're glad to see that she appreciates parts of what the administration is doing. They're glad to see that she came to talk to them about them. She's been in touch with Pam Bondi regularly at this point. They kind of know where each other are on a lot of these topics. The other parts, they basically say, like, we hear you. We hear you on ICE. We hear you on the masking. They can't promise her, and they don't promise her that they are going to, do anything and specifically to, they make no promises or assurances on those points. And honestly, Michael, on some of this beyond that level of detail, both Miss Wiles and the mayor didn't go further with me. They sort of said it. They both acknowledged it came up. We don't agree on these things. It's going to be an ongoing issue. But if they went much further in detail, I don't know.
You've got this quote from Wiles in there where she says it's not everybody that can navigate between President Donald Trump and the D.C. City Council. And Wiles says this in a complimentary way. But it struck me that, like, this is really the thing about Muriel Bowser and what people think of her right now, is that this is a person who everybody, whether you're on the far right or a regular D.C. resident in a blue city, you sort of know this is a person who's got a really lousy hand and is playing it as best she can. And the divide, I guess, is between people who sort of are willing to give some grace for that and some permissions, and people who are like, no, you're caving in. Or I guess from the other side, there's people who think she wasn't fawning enough towards the president. And you get into in this reporting some of the stuff that appears maybe like self-inflicted wounds, where she took hits. One of them was not explaining her order to the press. This is when she said, after the emergency's done, we want maximum cooperation to the extent of the law, or words to that effect. To the extent of the law struck me as an important part, because that means that the DC law prohibits certain kind of ICE cooperation. But why did she, and this has been a pattern with her, I think, why did she not sort of explain that in better detail?
I think you've explained the situation very well. Like, she does not want to antagonize the president. If she goes out does a press conference and says, we are not helping ICE anymore, I think there's concern that Stephen Miller will see that, and President Trump will see that and say, like, well, here's another emergency order, sweetheart. She wants to make clear to residents, she didn't say this specifically, without making a great soundbite that will end up on Fox News. The minute she ends up on Fox News saying XYZ about ICE or Stephen Miller or the president, she's probably got trouble again. I think that's a legitimate concern. Now, I certainly understand, and I don't take a position on what would be the right thing to do here. But I think your point about like, it's not that fun of a job right now is right on. I mean, and it's not just obviously the mayor of Washington. It's, you know, a lot of parts of unfortunately, about public life are not that fun right now, between like what people are saying on the internet about you all the time, about just how polarized everything is all the time. So it's harder to be in the middle in any part of politics. And I certainly understand residents who just want to see a mayor who will fight against Trump. They just want to fight Trump. We're all Democrats. He's a Republican. Fight him. Do not help him with anything. And I hear from a lot of readers and residents that they would prefer to see somebody who did that. And she's not that.
So one of these meetings where she's in with Wiles and Bondi, and towards the end of the meeting, they're like, "You want to go talk to the president?" And in she goes to the Oval Office. You paint the scene. The president's just gotten off the phone with Tim Walz. Marco Rubio's in there on other business. And what struck me was that the president's ask of her is like, tell everyone how great this is.
Yes, exactly.
How does he put it? And when what happened?
You know, his message to her is, it would, you know, I don't have it in front of me, but it's along the lines of, it would be great if you would, you know, emphasize the good parts of this or say something. He wants her to go out there and say how great the surge is and how great it is that he helped save Washington from, you know, criminals and clean it up, and how, you know, he's already been talking about how now it's safe. 3 weeks ago it wasn't safe and now it is. You know, he's got this anonymous anecdote about his friend who never could go out to dinner in Washington. Now he goes to dinner every single night, despite the fact that, you know, restaurants are seeing many, many fewer guests and the economy is hurting. So when he's in the Oval Office with her, he's asking her, you know, go out there and say how great this is and how great a job I'm doing here. And she says, you know, I don't know what the specific words she uses in that moment, but she tells him, I'll see what I can do, more or less. Because an interesting part of this, Michael, is she has already scheduled a press conference for herself to make an announcement that afternoon. She schedules it before she goes to the White House, and then comes from the White House and goes to make her announcement. So,
and what does she say about it? Does she go along with it and say things are going great
in the press conference?
Yeah.
Well, she has a very, you know, you can read the slides. She's published them about. She talks about, this is where we are in terms of home rule. This is where we are in terms of public safety. She goes through the specifics of like what rights the district does and does not have, and what the emergency order incurs on the district. And that she wants to get out of this emergency order. And she says that the district appreciates, the word appreciates being the key word, the president's surge of law enforcement. And that's the word that drives, you know, liberals and many residents and members of the city council just bananas to hear that she said that.
Another thing that happened right around this time is they have a little party to celebrate their great successes. And they invite the mayor and her team, the police chief, and so on. They debate about whether we should go. I mean, like, basically, do we want to be photographed drinking cocktails with Stephen Miller? What'd they wind up doing, and how did it go?
Yeah, this is very right toward the end of the emergency order when it's about to expire. Susie Wiles invites the mayor to a reception at the White House, a meet and greet, maybe would be a term for it. And she invites many members of the cabinet to attend from the White House side, and asks if the mayor bring a bunch of her staff. It's Miss Wiles wants to see the two sides, you know, help them work together. And part of that is like, let's all get together, and you can see sort of that the person from the other side of the political aisle that maybe is getting demonized on social media or on television or whatnot is a real person that you can work with from both sides. You know, it is a tough moment for the mayor. She did not share very much about this meeting or this meet and greet with me. I had to do a lot of other reporting to figure out what happened there. You know, like, people in the city are still in trauma. Like, you know, you see the videos, Michael, of people getting pulled off the street in unmarked vans, masked officers violently arresting people. You know, many people.
And more prosaically, a lot of her constituents being thrown out of work by Doge.
100%. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of So like there's a lot of anger in the city still, real anger in the city, and fear, frankly, among especially particularly, minority residents and people who are either undocumented or might be considered undocumented by mass law enforcement from other places. So the city is really still in trauma, and she has to decide whether to go to this meet and greet at the White House, whether there are going to be, refreshments served, cocktails. So she decides to go. And the reasoning she gave me for going was all the members of the cabinet are going to be there. Any chance we get to go in front of those people to make our point on economic issues, public safety issues, transportation issues, we have to do it. And to her credit on that point of view, like they've been trying to meet at this point Russ Vought, who's in charge of, he's the head of OMB, and he's in charge of not only making sure personnel are going to the office, but also things like, will headquarter agencies be leaving Washington and be relocated to other places, as President Trump has vowed to do? And she does not want to see those things. She wants federal agencies to stay their headquarters in Washington, and she wants people to go to the office so that they will, help the downtown resurgence that she's been working on and spending money on. So she decides to go. She goes home, she changes, she goes. She doesn't say anything to the press about it afterwards. The White House makes no announcement about it, but, the president does show up there. And again, like he thanks the mayor. He tells everybody there what a great job she's been doing. And they shake hands. And she helps him with a dinner recommendation for later because he's going to Joe's Seafood. And she has been there recently a number of times in the previous week or so. So again, she is cordial. She's professional. She's playing nice, and she's trying to get something for it.
How's the conversation with Vought go?
I don't know too much about that. I mean, a specific topic of interest from the mayor's office is, they want to see those agencies stay here and they want to see workers go to them. That was a priority under Biden as well. I mean, you have not seen, I think to this point, a year in or so, not quite a year in, too many agencies relocating. So maybe that's possibly a win, but there's 3 years left. So a little hard to tell.
So the thing I thought was like most amazing in your reporting is now we're the emergency's over. We're a few weeks later, and all of a sudden, this social media post from the president comes down, where he's like, "We'll be back, Mayor, if you don't fully cooperate," based on their sense that the city wasn't all in on helping ICE. This sent shockwaves through it, and again, it was this: look at Muriel Bowser, she cooperates and cooperates and cooperates, and this is what she gets. Meantime, a reporter, and I assume the reporter is you,
yes,
texts the mayor and is like, "What's up?" And she sends back this Marshawn Lynch meme.
Yes.
I mean, that motherfucker say a lot of shit, but at the end of the day, like...
That's kind of amazing. Has that been reported before?
No. There's a lot of times from the time I'm following her around, Michael, where he says something about her on television, insults her on TV, insults the city on TV. And I'm like, well, what do you think of that? What would be your response to that? Have you, or taken any reaction to that? And a lot of times she's like, I'm not mixing it. She does not want to mix it up. So she eventually just started sending me that Marshawn Lynch interview where he's like, basically, yeah, like this guy says a lot of stuff. What are you going to do? She's not here to react to things that are happening on social media. She's not here to react to the thing of the day or the morning necessarily. She's taking this longer view of, in this number of days, I want to be out of this emergency order. And how do I stick to that plan to get out of here? And she's practical about that. So, I mean, that's just what she started every time I asked her about what zany, usually untrue thing that Trump said about her on media or in front of reporters. She just started sending me that again.
But wait, she was catching so much flack, and I'm talking specifically about the one where he threatened to retake over. She was catching so much flack from people. Why didn't you report that at the time? If that was, I mean, that's like that's a pretty... it suggests that she wasn't just taking it, but you waited till this piece.
I mean, like the issue that is still in front of all of our faces in the city right now is MPD helping ICE? Is MPD helping these deportation agencies? And that is the thing that, to me, readers and constituents are most angry about. They do not want to see MPD helping. They hate ICE and they don't want to see MPD helping them. The mayor technically now has won back control of her MPD. She is in charge of her police force. And yet everybody still, again, with yeah, maybe it's wavering regularity or frequency, but there have still been multiple instances that my colleagues have written about where MPD is seen helping ICE or HSI or CBP pick people up off the street for the suspicion of not having papers. And sometimes violently. Sometimes it's parents in front of people's schools. Sometimes people going to work. And nobody in the city right now, I want to say nobody, almost nobody wants to see MPD help with that. And the mayor so far has not been successful in getting MPD separate from those agencies. And she's not really specifically said to reporters who've asked what her direction to MPD has been. Specifically, what has your direction to the police chief been about whether to cooperate or what to do and when to cooperate with those agencies? So that remains a huge sticking point. And, I just think that's still she's still, I don't want to say struggling, but like that is still the struggle that the city is in, because she can say, we don't want MPD helping with those agencies, but to actually do it is a different thing. Now, what happened exactly the day that Trump put that social media post out about, threatening to take over the city again or issue another emergency order or whatever his threat is, it's in response to some effort by the mayor to try to de-link her police force from his immigration forces.
Look, let me ask you this, and this is a little bit conjecture, but we have just had the second incident in a couple of weeks. This was last Thursday, when for the second time, right in the same neighborhood off Benning Road, a federal Homeland Security investigations officer shot at a car in D.C. DC police are generally assumed to be much, much, much better trained than some of these federal forces in dealing with the sort of urban policing issues. And the great fear of a lot of the people I talk to is like, one of these days, one of these yahoos is going to get somebody killed.
Yes, the mayor shares this fear, exact fear.
And what will happen then? This will lead to riots, it'll lead to disturbances, it'll lead to chaos, and that will in turn goad Trump into some sort of overreaction the other way. Based on all of your reporting about these relationships and the way people worked with each other or didn't work with each other within DC, within the federal government, what would you think would happen if some sort of unpredictable bombshell were thrown into the situation?
Oh, God, I worry about that all the time. I mean, I was especially worrying about it during the surge when there were, again, like, people are only going to take so much. You can only see so many people that are your neighbors or your friends getting dragged off the street and thrown in a van, and sometimes their kids are left behind. Like, so, I worry about that all the time. It feels a little bit less acute to me personally than it did maybe 3 weeks ago in the middle, or certainly in the middle of the surge or the emergency order. But yeah, I mean, that's part of the, like, some people think like, the National Guard being around here is just kind of like it's sort of a weird oddity now. I mean, I'm sure you've seen them standing around, they're standing around metro stations, eating sandwiches, sometimes raking or sweeping something up, and like,
there's some long grass in one of the federal parks in my neighborhood. I would really like to alert them.
Yeah. It's sometimes fun to make light of it. And they're, these people are missing, they're away from their families and far from home and probably not doing what they were thinking they were doing when they signed up to be National Guardsmen. But then you worry about a situation like the one you're talking about where, maybe it's nighttime, they feel under threat, they're armed, and like they are not necessarily prepared to be operating on Benning Road at 10 o'clock at night, and where MPD has been trained specifically for that. And I think it's a legitimate fear that something bad could happen, that violence could happen, not only in Washington, frankly, but in other cities, Boston or Chicago. And you've seen a number of instances of violence in Chicago. And I think you've seen some people argue like this is part of Trump's strategy here. He wants to go push and prod and provoke people into some type of violence. And then other people will argue, well, listen, violence is down in Washington, and it's dropped in an increasing way since Trump put his order in place. It's unarguable that violent crime has dropped faster, that there are fewer carjackings, that there are fewer homicides, and they have pulled dozens and dozens of guns off the street, which has been a priority of every single mayor in Washington. So, I do worry about that all the time, that possibility of violence between federal law enforcement and the citizens here. I do worry about that.
But based on what you've learned about how these people work with each other or don't, do you have confidence that she could work with people in the federal government to de-escalate in the event that some incident led to disturbances?
Right now, I would say yes. I would say that, they're very happy to take her call. She's happy to take their call. They have discussed many things they don't agree on, cordially and professionally, in a way you'd want, I think, a working relationship to be. I don't know by any means everything that happens behind the scenes, but I do think that she would be able to get answers about what happened if she needed them. I think that if she had concerns, that they would be heard, if not acted upon. And I think in the event of a violent situation, that probably would be helpful. But it's hard to predict. It's a hypothetical.
Of course. So let me take you back to the beginning, because I know you've got to bounce. She said, and you quote her to this effect, that like her goal is to save home rule. Did she? We still in the crosshairs? Where do you? What's your level of confidence, or more importantly, what's her level of confidence?
Well, I think she would say we got 3 years left to go. We don't know what will happen in the midterms. I think home rule is under much more threat, a much greater threat when Republicans control the Senate and the House. And I think there is an added concern right now because Democrats are viewed politically as too soft on crime, or have been. I don't know if that's definitely been part of the discussion in these last few months. And there's concern that if there were, a large crime bill that came in front of some of the, kind of sort of more centrist Democrats that also included incursions on home rule, maybe granting more control over district government to the president in some way, or the administration, that some Democrats might kind of, just wince and vote for it, as they've done in other instances in which DC's home rule was, little bits or slice of DC's home rule was at risk. And that's the thing that I think is in front of our faces in terms of her protecting it. Right now, she's still the mayor of Washington. We are going to have our own elections, and she controls her police force. But nothing stops the president from issuing a new emergency order tomorrow. And frankly, I think it's legally questionable whether he could do a second one after that and a third one after that. But there's ample evidence that the president is not super worried about whether there's like a legal gray zone or not. If he wanted to issue 20 in a row, I don't know that anybody would stop him. If he wanted to take over the police force the rest of his term, I don't really know what specifically, eventually the courts might intervene and maybe they wouldn't. But I think that still hangs over the city and will as long as he's the president.
Jonathan, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, it's great to be here. I love what you guys are doing. I'm glad to be part of it.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. And if you want to support conversations like these, become a CityCast DC member. You can do so at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.